One steel tube, 29 men, a weapon the world's admirals called a coward's toy. September 22, 1914, the North Sea holds its breath. 3 British warships drift, unguarded, unaware. Beneath them, a shadow waits, patient, hungry, invisible. In 80 minutes, naval warfare dies, and something terrifying is born. Before this morning, nobody believed a submarine could kill a warship of this size. Nobody believed one captain, one crew, and one torpedo tube could shatter centuries of naval doctrine in under 2 hours. What happened to HMS Aboukir wasn't just a sinking, it was a warning the world refused to hear. If you want to uncover the hidden machinery behind history's forgotten turning points, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what other impossible weapon changed war forever. Picture the Royal Navy in the summer of 1914, the largest, proudest fleet on Earth, built on a single unshakable belief that steel armor and heavy guns decided who ruled the seas. Submarines existed, yes, but admirals dismissed them as fragile, half-blind contraptions, barely seaworthy, incapable of threatening a real warship. They were toys for cowards, unworthy of a gentleman's war. This wasn't ignorance. It was doctrine, decades of naval thinking built entirely around visible power, dreadnoughts, broadsides, columns of steel meeting in daylight, decided by courage and firepower, not stealth. Nobody had designed a defense against an enemy they couldn't see coming, because nobody believed such an enemy could exist in any meaningful way. Meanwhile, in German shipyards, a different philosophy was quietly taking shape. Engineers weren't chasing prestige. They were chasing efficiency, a weapon cheap to build, difficult to detect, and devastating if it worked. The U-boat program was underfunded, mocked even within Germany's own navy, treated as a supporting tool rather than a war-winning weapon. But one captain, Otto Weddigen, understood something his superiors hadn't fully grasped. The ocean itself could become a hiding place more powerful than any armor plate ever forged. His vessel, U-9, was primitive by later standards, cramped, slow, prone to mechanical failure, reeking of oil and sweat, crewed by men who trusted engineering they barely understood. Yet hidden inside that fragile hull sat something the surface fleet had never faced: patience. A submarine didn't need to win a fight. It needed to wait, unseen, until the moment was right. On the morning of September 22nd, 3 aging British cruisers, Aboukir, Hogue, and Cressy, steamed slowly through open water, following orders that assumed safety where none existed, unaware that the age of visible warfare was about to end beneath their own hulls. The 3 cruisers assigned that morning weren't chosen for strength. They were relics, obsolete vessels nicknamed the Live Bait Squadron by sailors who already sensed something was wrong. Aboukir, Hogue, and Cressy were slow, thinly armored, and desperately short of escort ships, patrolling a stretch of the North Sea known as the Broad 14s without proper destroyer protection. Weather had forced their escorts back to port days earlier, and no replacement had arrived. Command knew the gap existed. Command allowed the patrol to continue anyway. Officers aboard had voiced concern. Steaming in a predictable straight line at slow speed, morning after morning, was practically an invitation for exactly the kind of attack no one believed could succeed. That confidence, misplaced, inherited from decades of naval superiority, blinded commanders to a simple truth: predictability is a gift to any hunter patient enough to notice it. Beneath the surface, U-9 had been struggling for days, battling rough seas and a barely functional gyro compass, forced to travel partially surfaced just to keep navigation reliable. Weddigen nearly aborted the mission entirely. Mechanical failure, exhausted crew, treacherous seas. Every signal pointed toward retreat, toward waiting for a safer day. Instead, he chose to press forward, guided less by certainty and more by instinct, a gambler's faith that the ocean still owed him one clear opportunity. Just after dawn, through a periscope barely breaking the surface, 3 unmistakable silhouettes appeared on the horizon, exactly the kind of target naval theorists had insisted no submarine could realistically approach undetected. In that instant, decades of naval doctrine and one exhausted captain's stubborn persistence collided, setting in motion a sequence of decisions that would, within the hour, force the entire world to reconsider what a submarine was actually capable of doing. At 6:20 a.m., Weddigen gave the order that would rewrite naval history. A single torpedo, the only shot he could confidently afford given his limited supply, sliced silently toward Aboukir's hull. The explosion tore through the cruiser's starboard side with a violence nobody aboard had prepared for. Water surged inward faster than any damage control team could respond. Within moments, Aboukir began listing hard, her deck tilting toward the sea at an angle that made standing, let alone fighting the flooding, nearly impossible for her crew. Captain Drummond, still uncertain what had struck his ship, initially suspected a mine rather than a torpedo, because a submarine attack remained, in his mind, almost unthinkable. That single moment of disbelief cost precious minutes. No distress signal warning of a submarine went out immediately because nobody wanted to believe the impossible had just occurred. Sailors scrambled toward lifeboats as the ship groaned under its own shifting weight. Some men trapped below decks as watertight doors sealed compartments meant to save the vessel, not her crew. Nearby, Hogue and Cressy did exactly what naval training demanded. They slowed down and moved closer to rescue survivors, unknowingly following the oldest maritime instinct straight into a trap. Weddigen watched through his periscope in disbelief. The very compassion that defined naval tradition, never abandoned drowning sailors, was delivering him 2 more targets without any effort at all. Within 25 minutes, Aboukir capsized completely, swallowing hundreds of men into cold water, many of whom couldn't swim, a skill Royal Navy training had never considered essential. As Aboukir disappeared beneath the surface, Weddigen repositioned U-9 with methodical calm, reloading his remaining torpedoes, fully aware that the ships now converging to rescue survivors had unknowingly transformed themselves into the next act of a tragedy the world hadn't yet learned to fear. Hogue arrived first, her crew lowering boats and throwing lines toward drowning survivors, entirely unaware that beneath the chaos, U-9 was already sliding into firing position. Weddigen fired 2 torpedoes in rapid succession. Both struck true, tearing into Hogue's hull with a force that rocked the surrounding water and sent debris raining across the surface. Unlike Aboukir, Hogue had almost no time to react. The damage was catastrophic and immediate, flooding compartments faster than any crew could seal them. Within 10 minutes, Hogue rolled onto her side and sank, adding hundreds more men to the freezing water already crowded with Aboukir's survivors. 2 warships gone in under an hour, yet, incredibly, Cressy, the last cruiser remaining, made the same fatal decision her sisters had made moments earlier. Her captain, seeing 2 ships destroyed by an enemy he still couldn't visually confirm, nonetheless ordered his crew to slow down and begin rescue operations, unwilling to leave drowning sailors behind. It was an act of extraordinary courage. It was also, tactically, exactly what Weddigen needed most. One final stationary target, sitting motionless above his remaining torpedoes. U-9 now had only 2 torpedoes left, and mechanical strain from days of rough seas threatened total failure at any moment, a detail Cressy's crew had no way of knowing. Weddigen fired his first shot, watched it miss narrowly, then committed to his second attempt with a captain's calculated desperation, knowing failure here meant returning home with nothing to show for the mission. The torpedo struck Cressy's hull with devastating precision, and within 20 minutes, she too rolled beneath the waves, completing a catastrophe that no naval planner, no admiral, and no textbook had ever considered remotely possible. 3 armored cruisers, over 1,400 men, destroyed by a single vessel the world's most powerful navy had refused to take seriously. When U-9 returned to port, Weddigen wasn't just celebrated. He became a national symbol, proof that Germany's underfunded submarine program had just outmaneuvered the mightiest navy on Earth. Berlin awarded him the Iron Cross First Class. Newspapers printed his portrait beside headlines proclaiming a new era of warfare, one where size and tradition no longer guaranteed dominance. In Britain, the response was closer to panic than mourning. Over 1,400 sailors were dead, and the Admiralty faced an uncomfortable truth. Their doctrine had been catastrophically, publicly wrong. Emergency reforms followed almost immediately. Ships were ordered never again to stop for rescue operations in open, exposed waters, a policy that felt inhumane but suddenly undeniably necessary. Convoy tactics, once dismissed as unnecessary caution, were reconsidered from scratch. Escort requirements tightened. Submarine detection became a research priority overnight, rather than an afterthought. The psychological impact reached further than any single reform. Sailors across the fleet now understood that calm water itself could conceal death, that safety was no longer measured by distance from visible enemies. Military theorists across Europe took notice. If 3 armored cruisers could vanish in under 90 minutes, no surface fleet, however powerful, could consider itself truly safe again. Germany accelerated submarine production dramatically, recognizing that this single, almost accidental success had exposed a vulnerability every naval power would now be forced to address. Within years, unrestricted submarine warfare would reshape global conflict entirely, dragging neutral nations toward involvement and forcing military strategy to evolve faster than at any point in decades. What began as 3 obsolete cruisers on a routine patrol became the moment naval warfare fractured permanently, proof that the deadliest weapons aren't always the loudest, but the ones nobody believed deserved fear until it was already too late. HMS Aboukir wasn't destroyed by superior firepower. It was destroyed by outdated assumptions, by a doctrine too confident to imagine its own vulnerability. 1 captain, 1 damaged submarine, and 80 minutes. exposed a truth naval powers had spent decades refusing to confront. The lesson outlived the wreckage. History rarely punishes weakness first. It punishes certainty, the belief that yesterday's rules will always protect tomorrow.